Hi guys, my name's Alyssa and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to start the series on the houses, so it's the first house. When are you going to do the 8th house? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is the first house and we're just going to kind of dive right into it. The first house is your house of self. That's what it's commonly referred to as. This means it is the most important house to you, to yourself, to who you are, what you were about to become. Everything is here in your first house. First house is your physical demeanor. It's your stature. It's the way you carry yourself. It's your look about you, the way you present yourself. It's what you want to show people. It's your ascendant sign, because your ascendant rules your first house. It starts off the chain. So right when you were born, the very moment of birth, you get your first house cusp. That's why your birth time is very important to you if you want to get specific with these houses. If you don't know your birth time, you don't know your houses, and therefore you don't know what your first house is. You don't know what your ascendant sign is. I'm going to be doing a video with my sister on how to guess an ascendant sign, so it could help. Right now, you can talk to an astrologer and you can get pretty damn close. And a lot of times you can figure it out with what goes on in your first house. If your ascendant sign leads off your first house, it's basically, doesn't matter if you have any planets in your first house whatsoever, your ascendant rules that first house. You can have another sign in that house, but it's still your ascendant that takes control over that first house. That's why your ascendant's so important. And I made a bunch of videos like a couple years ago on them. If you haven't watched those, you can. Kind of describes your personality and the foot you started life on and the foot you will end your life on, because it is you. Before we get into any of the planets, I want to explain what the actual sign means to that. If a sign rules a house, it's like a person owns the house. Here's your house of self, and the person that is in there telling you how to be, how to look, how to dress, what to act like is that sign. My person is Pisces. Okay, so everything about me is Pisces. Now you can see other influences from other planets, but the major one will always be what is in your first house. And for me, the only thing in my first house, I have no planets there, it's just Pisces. And I have an Aries interception, and then I have Taurus. And Taurus kicks off my second house, which we're just not even going to go into that. Someone very rudely once told me that they don't like me when I act like a Pisces ascendant, they like me when I act like an Aries ascendant because of my interception. Well, I actually never really act like an Aries ascendant, because since it's intercepted, it's very hard for me to reach that Aries. It's like a house guest. This first house is all ruled by Pisces, and then I'm going to invite Aries over, and then I'm going to give Aries the guest room. I might feed Aries, we might chit chat, and then Aries is going to get the fuck out of there because I rule over this house. Anything that has to do with Aries in general is not anything that my first house ever feels like it has time for, which means I lack Aries. Which makes sense why I am attracted to people with Aries ascendants or Aries, someone to help me out of that lacking of Aries. Now let's say that you have planets in your first house. Each one of those planets is staying with your ascendant sign. So you're a Gemini ascendant and you have Mars in your first house. It doesn't matter if Mars is in your Gemini or if maybe Mars is even in Cancer. If it's in your first house, it's affected by your first house. So Gemini ruling over your first house, and it invited Mars over. Mars then activates that house and makes it stronger and starts to control it because it's a planet hanging out in that first house. Personality-wise, this makes you a certain way. I can't go into every single planet in there, but say Mars in your first house might make you a bully because it's angry, it's aggressive, now it represents how you carry yourself to the world, how you give yourself, and you're a bully because you express yourself with a sort of anger. So you have Venus there. People are going to find you attractive because Venus is a planet of beauty and it's in your first house. So it doesn't matter what you do. They're like, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. What about Neptune? Neptune in your first house and you're like Marilyn Monroe. Nobody knows who Marilyn Monroe is because they look at her and they project their own wants and needs onto her. It's not that you love Marilyn. It's that you get Marilyn tattooed on you because she was beautiful and you see yourself in her. And someone with Neptune in the first house, because it's delusion, rose-colored glasses, they are a reflection of you. You see yourself in them. So having something in your first house totally alters people's perception of you. Having your sun in the first house is going to give you confidence. It's going to make you care about yourself. It's going to make you love yourself. You might not be in Aries, but you're going to take on these Aries traits because Aries rules the first house. You're going to be strong, ambitious, and brave. People will look at you like you are confident because your sun, you're projecting your sun. A lot of times you might be that person who's like, what you see is what you get. Because here my sun is what I am, and my ascendant is what I'm projecting, and it's all one and the same. I'm not full of pretense here. I'm not lying to you. I am my sun, and it's in my first house. When you're born, you start off on your first house. That's when you're learning about yourself. It's because when you're a baby, that's all you care about is you. There's nothing else you want more than to make sure your needs are met. That is why babies only know how to cry. That's what babies do. And that is what your first house is all about. What do babies do? Say your needs weren't met. You could have your Saturn in the first house. You were shut up a lot as a baby. You wanted to express yourself, and there was a muzzle put on you. No, I don't care what you have to say. You'll cry it out. That crying it out thing, that puts a lot of negative planets in someone's first house because they are not able to express themselves. And that's the first thing you have to learn. How do I express myself? Oh, I'm not allowed to. Okay, that's now how I'm going to be for the rest of my life because it's my first house. I say someone is allowed to express themselves, but there's a lot of anger against them. You yell, I'm going to yell back at you. I can't handle my baby. I can't handle you. Stop yelling. You could put Mars in your baby's first house. Then when they grow up, they're a bully, and they don't know why because they're always attacking because they always felt attacked. That's how they learned. I yell, you yell, we all yell. We just yell. And Venus is in my first house. You're the most beautiful baby I've ever seen in my whole life. Do you know how beautiful you are? I just love you so much. The baby is like, I'm the most beautiful baby in the world. And you start identifying yourself. I love beautiful things. Sometimes you can have Venus in your first house, and that didn't happen to you because your first house is so implanted on you. It happens before you even realize it's happening. Nurturing a baby and how you do that, it's such a small thing, but it really does alter the course of someone's life. If you think about it, what's implanted in you forever, and you'll never escape it, and now you are this way. I know a little baby with Neptune in the first house, and I heard her mother say things to her baby like, you're so mad at me because I did this to your father. You're so mad at me because I can't provide for my family. And the thing is with a baby, they're not mad at you for that because they don't even know. They're mad at you because you're so busy complaining you're not caring for them. Your mother was mad at herself. She felt guilty, and so she didn't want to deal with it, so she put it on her baby. And that can put Neptune in your first house. So you kind of always take on other people's projections. I know someone with their Saturn in the first house whose father was in jail a lot. I also know a girl who was adopted, and I also know someone with Saturn in the first house who never met their father. So here you are, this Saturn restriction, it's like karmic restriction, not allowing you to really fully ever know yourself because you never really got to know your father. You have this restriction on your personality because it's hard to know who you are when you don't know what gave you life. And so that Saturn there restricts you in a way, and it makes it hard for you to express yourself because you don't know if it's okay for you to do that. Your first house is not just what your mother and your father are implanting on you. It's also just how you view the world. So how you take your first steps, when you decide to do that, how are you going to go off into the world? You have an Aries ascendant, you probably wanted to walk as quickly as possible. You have a Gemini ascendant, you probably wanted to talk before you could do anything or communicate in some way, use your hands. You have a Libra ascendant, you probably were taught to care about other people before yourself. You have a Pisces ascendant, you might have been emotionally aware of your surroundings. Even like with a Cancer ascendant, the same deal. They're the way you figured out in the earliest stages of you, who you were and where you were going. So having a lot of planets in your first house, a stellium, that's when you have 3 or more planets, can be great. Can be like, wow, this person is confident, this person is just amazing, I love this person knows themselves. But it can also be very negative. And any planet there adds something to your personality. A lot of times because you're not thinking about it, because it's so innately inside of you, it's hard to fix. Because how do you fix something you don't know how it got there in the first place? You know, there's a difference between memories and emotional memories. Emotional memories, you have them from birth. You're emotionally scarred every time, even if you don't remember it. And then you have the mental memories, which you forget and you move on from. Anything in your first house implants that way. Anything in your first house affects you on that emotional memory part. And so if it's a good emotional memory, you're just like, wow, I'm just so naturally happy and confident and exciting, and I really just feel like I can get stuff done and people like me and yada yada. But then if it's a bad emotional memory, I don't know why people treat me like this. I'm just really insecure. Everything bad happens to me. It's like I walk into a room and the lights turn off. I don't know why I don't know myself. I have the worst identity crisis on a regular basis. You can have identity crises also when your house is empty. So it's really possible that every single person has an identity crisis. So if your house is empty, you don't have anything aiding that identity. There's nothing specific there going on except for your ascendant ruler, that sign that implanted in you. I have a Pisces ascendant and my mother is a Pisces. My mother is implanted in me. My father is also a Pisces. Go figure. My brother and I both have Pisces ascendants. This is our identity. My brother has his sun and Venus in the first house with a Pisces ascendant. So he's like me, but people like him more. Does it mean that he had a better childhood? No, but what I do know, he was the first, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom and got to spend a lot of time building into him, the way that I get to do with my son Remy. Then when I was born, my brother was already a big handful, and so she had to split time. And so I took on this Pisces. I just looked at her and, probably that baby, you're like, is that baby stupid? Because she doesn't really say a lot, she just stares. That was me, complacent. But my brother was like in your face and like everybody liked him and really exciting, and Sun, Venus in the first house. So if you're looking in, how you read a first house for somebody, you see if there's any planets there. You kind of look at their behavior, their personality. That's just all what you're going to find in their first house. It's what you're going to find in your own first house. It's how you're going to learn how to deal with who you are and where you've been and where you're going. Because that's what is there. Anytime you might be suffering an identity crisis, you might have something transiting your first house. And that is your first house. Thank you very much.